Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade, also known as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in Europe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Super Kamen Ninja in Japan, was released in 1989 by Konami. It's one of the most iconic arcades of the late 80s and early 90s, and it's based on the 1987 animated TV show, which was also inspired by Kevin Eastman and Peter Layer's comic book, published in 1984 by Mirage Studios. Now, it is definitely one that has survived the test of time. Even up to this day with the Arcade 1-Up cabinet, people are still talking, they're still remembering, they're still enjoying this really fun arcade. But was it that good? Well, in the next couple of minutes, we're going to explore this game. We're going to find out if it's definitely one of the best, or perhaps not as good as we remember. So stay tuned. The good. The first thing that we have to mention about this game is just the graphics. Just the intro alone was just worth just the price tag. It was beautiful, very colorful. It was really inspired on the cartoon, so you saw the different characters, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles plus the Foot Clan. So everything took a lot of inspiration, and of course, back in those years, you know, people were playing with the toys, so definitely it was heavily inspired on it and people were attracted to it, so definitely it gets a lot of points because of that. Also, the soundtrack in this game is one of the greatest of all time in my opinion. Just the sound effects, the music in the background, the turtles' voices, all of that was really, really iconic, and it took a lot of inspiration, of course, from the TV show. It was one of the loudest among all the rest, and that's one of the reasons why people were attracted, not only because of the visuals, but also because of the sound. Now, beat-em-ups are notorious for being easy to pick up and master, and this game was no exception. There was only 2 buttons, one for jump and one for attack, and if you press both buttons simultaneously, you can generate or create a special attack. You can also pull special moves and throws when closer to your enemies. It was very simple, it was quirky, it was fast-paced, and definitely was very vibrant. This game has a lot of variety. Besides hordes of enemies with different weapons, there's also stage hazards to avoid. This really keeps you on your toes and is very, very entertaining. As any other beat-em-up, the game is divided into levels, which are also divided into sub-levels. There are 7 distinct bosses: Rocksteady, Bebop, Baxter Stockman, Granitor, Track, Krang, and Shredder, who is actually the final boss. Now, some of these characters, they came from the cartoon, some other characters were created in the game, but each one of them is different, and in so many ways they're very cheap and hard to beat. Although you can choose between the 4 turtles and they all kind of look the same, they're very different in their approach and they have different moves. Leonardo with his katanas is the most well-rounded fighter with mid-range attacks and agility. Michelangelo is the fastest of the bunch with his nunchucks and super cool moves. He's a fan favorite. Donatello with his bow staff is the slowest of the team, but most effective at long range. He is my favorite. Raphael with his size has short range, but he's the strongest fighter of all. He's definitely a brawler. The bad. Now it's time to talk about the bad. Although this game is perhaps one of the best arcades of all time, it is not perfect at all. One of the biggest problems the game has is how short it feels. Of course, nowadays we're more accustomed to put many hours into a game. Back in the day, we didn't have that. So this game can be finished, if you really go through it, I would say between 30 minutes. I've seen people actually finishing in like 15 minutes, which is amazing. But it's really short and sweet, and it's fun. You know, there's a lot of variety in every scene. However, it's still short in comparison to newer games. Of course, old gamers like myself will have no problem with it because it brings a lot of memories. But a younger audience, younger gamers, they will feel cheated because of the short time by the end of the game. Another problem people will point out about this game is how cheap the bosses feel. They're really hard as nails, hard to beat. Now, you have to keep in mind that that was the intent in this game. In that era of arcades, these games were designed to really be coin eaters. So you have to master the game in order to finish it. Nowadays, we're so accustomed to free play and infinite lives. The rewards are really low in comparison to the 80s or the 90s. Because we don't have to go through all of that. It seems simpler to us. But of course, this is a big difference between the games that we grew up playing and the games that now people are playing. In conclusion, well, I can tell you one thing. I'm a big fan of this game, like I mentioned before. I grew up playing it. I play it so much. I put so many quarters in it, and there were so many times that I couldn't finish it because I didn't have enough money. So the fact that I'm able to play it nowadays in different ways is definitely a reward, and it brings back the memories of the childhood. Now, this game saw different ports. In 1990, it was ported to the NES. It was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. It is simply a port, not the same as the arcade, but definitely it has its same charm. It adds 2 extra levels with 2 new bosses and also new enemies. It was also ported to the Spectrum, the Amiga, the PC, the Commodore 64, and other computers. It was done through ImageWorks and Pro Software. Now, there was a version through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Battle Nexus. You got the option to unlock the game. This was done on the PS2, the Xbox, the GameCube. This was published by Konami. And the Xbox Live Arcade that came out in 2007, the listed long time ago, that was actually published by Ubisoft. That was another option where you can download the game. Now, the only alternative that we have nowadays is through Arcade 1-Up Cabinet, or you can also play it on your computer through ROMs. Unfortunately, we don't have an official way to play a newer console, which is a shame. You can play online through different websites, but it's not the same as owning at least the virtual game. Now, I can tell you, this game is perhaps one of the greatest brawlers of all time. It has flaws, but it doesn't mean that the game is not fun to play and really catchy and brings back so many memories. So if I have to give this game a final score, I would say it's a 9 out of 10. Of course, the game has some flaws, but that doesn't mean that you cannot have fun with it. Yeah, some people are going to point out the short duration of the entire game or the cheap bosses, but those are part of, I would say, the generation where this game came from. And although the game is obsolete by today's standards, it's definitely one of the greatest and funnest of all time. One that should be kept and played and should be always remembered by the older generations, but also needs to be known and respected by the younger generations. But what do you think? Are you a fan? Are you still playing this game, or you just don't think it's the greatest thing ever? Let me know in the comments below. So once again, my friends, thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.